with Geisa Fernandes. Hello and welcome to Comics and Jazz, the podcast. I am Geisa Fernandes, singer, songwriter and researcher, and you are my guest on this visual and musical journey. This is the 7th part of Comics and Jazz. Quick recap. In episode 6, we talked about the academic recognition of jazz and comics, their cultural interconnectedness, and the influence of the Black diaspora in both fields. The recognition of comics and jazz as artistic languages by the academic community led to a deeper exploration of their cultural and historical significance. As these art forms have become the subjects of scholarly research and academic discourse, the focus has shifted towards understanding their intricate connections with society, history, and other forms of art. However, this academic recognition has also raised important questions about the potential distance it may have created between the popular origins of comics and jazz and the transformation of their respective audiences into an exclusive club of collectors. Today, we will talk about gender issues in jazz and comic books, focusing on the example of biographical graphic novels and the need for more authentic female characters. So make yourself comfortable, Jazz Cat. We're about to start. The parallel between comics and jazz, in their embrace of cultural plurality, highlights the significance of artistic expression in challenging societal norms and fostering greater understanding and appreciation for diverse cultural perspectives. From the iconic artwork of jazz album covers to posters promoting live performances, the visual representations of the jazz culture created a compelling visual narrative that parallels the sonic experience. The premise of this series of programs is that a large part of the aesthetics of jazz comes from the graphic arts, while the so-called ninth art finds a source of inspiration in the genre. Both mediums have the capacity to empower and amplify voices that are often underrepresented, and both are privileged fields for observing gender issues, which is the main point of today's episode. When it comes to comic books, the portrayal of gender roles and stereotypes is still a subject of debate. From the early days of the comic book industry, female characters were often relegated to stereotypical roles such as damsels in distress or sidekicks to their male counterparts. Although in recent years there has been a noticeable shift towards creating more diverse and empowering female characters, challenging traditional norms within the genre, there is still a lot of room for development. Similarly, in the realm of jazz, there has been a long history of male dominance, with female musicians often facing discrimination and gender-based barriers in pursuing their careers. Despite these challenges, there have been many influential female jazz musicians who have made a lasting impact on the genre, breaking through the traditional gender norms and paving the way for future generations of women in jazz. While achievements in the field of women's rights gain visibility outside the limits of representation, to use an expression from the French philosopher Michel Foucault, female protagonism still encounters a certain barrier in transposition into the language of comic books. Biographical graphic novels are a good example of how representation can both promote advances but also hinder them. When examining the portrayal of male and female characters in graphic novels, it becomes evident that these depictions often intertwine with and reflect the pervasive elements of the sexist social structure within which we exist. Particularly noteworthy is the prevalence of extremely eroticized bodies among the heroines in the niche of superheroes, a trend that not only perpetuates unrealistic and hypersexualized standards of beauty, but also reinforces the objectivation of female characters and female bodies within the medium. These portrayals underscore the need for a more progressive and inclusive approach to character representations within graphic novels, one that embraces diversity, rejects traditional gender norms, and, above all, strives for more authentic and multidimensional female characters representations. It is also often observed that, when it comes to women in jazz, representations tend to focus more on personal scandals rather than on the professional achievements. This imbalance can lead to a skewed perception of their contributions to the world of jazz and their impact on the broader cultural landscape. Such stereotypes have detrimental effects on the visibility and appreciation of women in music in general, and particularly in jazz, and their importance to the history of the genre, overlooking and/or undervaluing it. A good example of how the practice of victimization of the female protagonists in graphic biographies of jazz legends constitutes a widespread and naturalized visual grammar is the comparison of the covers of the biographies of jazz icons Billie Holiday, aka Lady Day, and Charles Mingus. Both graphic novels were published by NBM Graphic Novels, and I will leave a link to their homepage in the description of this episode so that you can check for yourself, okay? While certain aspects converge, such as the pervasive atmosphere infused with the smoke of cigarettes and cigars, the semiotic representations differ greatly in these two covers.
Lord, I love my man, tell the world I do. I love my man, tell the world I do.
On the cover of the graphic novel about Billie Holiday's life, the female figure is depicted in a state of desolation, completely devoid of any reference to her instrument, the voice, not even a microphone. And her figure is reduced to a dramatic one, in stark contrast to what happens on the cover of the Charles Mingus graphic novel, in which the musician is represented majestically embodying power and authority, shining in his musical prowess. These observations are intended to remind us that jazz, like comic books, provides a lens through which we can examine and question the attitudes of society towards gender issues. And therefore, both comics and jazz serve as important platforms for advocating gender equality and challenge preconceived notions about gender roles. You just heard the 7th part of Comics and Jazz, your visual musical journey with Geisa Fernandes. Thank you very much for your company and stay tuned for the next episode. Bye! Comics and Jazz, your visual musical journey with Geisa Fernandes.